Good morning, everybody. You got your Self Shift crew back for another short podcast on a gray February morning here in 2024. So you've got Patrick, Doug,
Hey,
Derrick,
Hey, good morning, everyone.
and we have got quite an interesting topic for today's discussion, which blends well into some of our previous discussions. So today we're going to talk about not comparing yourself to who you were yesterday and not comparing yourself to someone else today. And again, like a lot of the items that we discuss on the Self Shift podcasts, this is something that many people, the three of us included, certainly have suffered from and had to work through over many years. And I like to frame this up really in two primary dimensions. And we can go deep on both of these. We're going to go mostly deep on the benefits of comparing yourself to others. But the two primary dimensions are the dangers of comparing yourself to others and the benefits of comparing yourself to who you were yesterday and committing to self-improvement. And let's start with some foundational components. You are not someone else. You are you. You're unique. So you have a responsibility to yourself and others to recognize that and focus on what you can do to improve yourself. You know, the bottom line is become the best version of yourself, not try to compare yourself to your neighbors, your coworkers, celebrities on TV, or whatever the case may be. And although we're not going to go too much into the dangers of comparing yourself to others, I am going to hit you with a little bit of knowledge, right? And you probably recognize this, but when you're comparing yourself to others, many times you're comparing yourself to not what they really are, but to what you're seeing on social media and the best version of them. And in many cases, you're looking at their highlight reel, not their real life. And in many cases, that highlight reel is based upon an image they're trying to present for approval and validation. So just keep that in mind, especially those that tend to spend a lot of time on social media. I know the three of us probably don't, but for those that do, be really careful about what you're looking at because you're getting a highlight reel, not the real life. On the other hand, comparing yourself to who you were yesterday has some foundational benefits to it. And most notably, at least from my perspective, is that it enables incremental improvement. And I know that Doug, you and I have talked about this before, and Derrick, probably you and I as well. The thought that there really is no such thing as an epiphany. Change comes with work and grinding over time. That's why the concept of comparing yourself to who you were yesterday is so incremental. Because once you start doing that, then you can measure yourself on, did I actually get 1% better? Am I 1% better than I was yesterday? And although 1% doesn't really seem like a lot, over the course of months, weeks, years, it can result in significant life change. So before I go much into that, because as you can tell, I'm getting pretty excited about this topic, I want to get a perspective of our comrades here, and then we'll go into this. And as we always do with our Self Shift podcast, because transparently we're here to provide solid, examples and advice for those that want to implement some of the things that we talk about. We're going to talk about towards the end things that we've done in our own lives to bring this to fruition. So, but before we go forward, Derrick, what's your perspective to kick it off?
Yeah, well, comparing yourself is I think there's a couple aspects as you mentioned, Patrick, but it's not unhealthy to compare yourself to something that becomes a positive outcome in your life. Like for example, you see someone that's lost some weight and they're looking really healthy and they're thriving, and you look at them and you compare yourself and say, well, hey, I want to be like that, or I want to lose some weight, or I want to get there to where I look like I'm thriving again or healthy in life. So we always look at comparing ourselves to others, in a negative light, but there are healthy aspects to it. So I think that's important to point out too, as part of adding on to your commentary there. But health, comparing yourself to others comes from a depth of how you value yourself from your own perspective of like what it is within yourself that you're connecting with when you're comparing yourself to something or someone. So I think it comes from within yourself often. It could be an insecurity, or it may even be something that's deep within yourself that's inauthentic, and so you're connecting with something out there that could potentially be inauthentic, and that just leads you down a spiraling path of negative energy.
Doug?
Yeah, good stuff there. And again, I guess using that comparison as an inspiration is a positive thing there. But I'll go to, I think for me, the whole comparing myself to others thing started probably in my youth, probably similar to a lot of people, but you get that competitive competition, right? So in competition in school, competition in youth sports or other things like that, it gets you into a model or a mindset of, I need to get better grades than that person, or I need to get better, I need to score more soccer goals than that person. And so, again, there's a foundation of kind of, you want to do well. And like you said, you want to always be growing, but the competition kind of mindset can kind of get into your head. And then as you grow up, you transition into work life. And so naturally you're trying to be competitive with people in similar roles or people at similar phases of their career. And, so competition is, it kind of breeds it a little bit. But again, like everything else we talk about, being able to step back and observe, like, hey, where are these thoughts coming from? It's coming from kind of that mindset. And then starting to learn, like, hey, to the point you were making earlier, Patrick, I'm on my own unique journey. I'm not that person that's in that role, that has a different boss that's doing different work. And, again, there's all kinds of dimensions to why someone might get a role that you were hoping to get, or get an advancement you were hoping to get, and all those kind of things. So I guess in this words I'm trying to say, like, it all goes back to, again, understanding, hey, maybe I'm doing this comparison just because of the mindset, and I need to start shifting my mindset. So recognizing kind of you're doing it is a first step towards figuring out how to kind of have a different mindset. Sorry, a little rambly, but
No, that was actually really really insightful. And to kind of riff on what you both said is, I kind of started this podcast with kind of a negative connotation on never compare yourself to others, and Derrick brought it back a little bit, which I think is good because I am the type of person that has role models, right? So if I have a role model, then I do tend to look up to folks like, for example, Dwight Eisenhower is a role model of mine, and others in history that that have qualities and attributes that I try to model. I don't want to say I model my behavior after them, but when I see behaviors being shown by others, then it does provide at least some thought that I like the way this person conducts themselves. So maybe I can benefit from modeling some of that behavior. So there is some negativity. Just be careful. Don't compare yourself to others unhealthily. And it's very healthy to compare yourself to who you were yesterday and try to drive forward. So let me double click on a little bit of that because as Doug noted, he's had a lot of experience and had to work through this, and as Derrick as well, and I certainly have. Looking and making sure that I wasn't unhealthily comparing myself to others, and when I really started looking inward, right? Because I think as we've mentioned before, um, we all have a tendency to look outward and be judgmental or whatever, as opposed to looking ourselves in the mirror and trying to recognize that in reality, this is the only person that I can really do anything about. And, how do I start down that journey? For me, that was a big leaping off point because I hadn't looked at life. I always looked at life outside as opposed to inside. And when I went on my journey, I basically shifted that around. And a couple of things that have been really beneficial for me, and I'm going to give you some examples that folks are probably going to laugh at, but is when I compare myself to who I was yesterday, and I take this seriously. As a matter of fact, I journal every day, and the 5 components of my journaling are: what did I do well yesterday? What could I have done better? What 3 things am I grateful for? What do I need to get done today? And number 5 is, am I 1% better, and how? So I've got to write that down. And so that's kind of how I hold myself accountable. But one of the things that I've done on my journey is basically, and I'm going to give credit to James Clear, the author of Atomic Habits, for framing a lot of this up much more eloquently than I'm going to say it here today, is basically using the concept of micro habits and tacking those onto things, and then using that kind of as a platform to try to get better. And I'll give you some basic examples. Again, some of these are a little bit embarrassing, but at one point in my life, I guess maybe 10 years ago, I was significantly overweight. Actually, I was, I'm only 5'9", and I was up to, I think, 230 pounds. And I looked at myself in the mirror one day and I'm like, I don't know who you are, but we got to do something about this. Right. And so at the time, I was working in an organization that was, fortunately made gym memberships very available to their employees. We had a gym almost in every building. There was a gym in the basement of our building. So I joined the gym, and I made a commitment to go down to the gym and stay at least 5 minutes for the first week. I'm not making that up, literally 5 minutes. So I would go, it would take me longer to get in the locker, change my clothes, and go to and that was longer than actually being on the floor, walking on the treadmill, lifting a few weights or whatever. And but I did it 5 minutes, and I did it consistently every day after work, right? 5 minutes. In the second week, it was 10 minutes, right? And transparently, people were looking at me like, dude, you're only here 5 minutes. And after a while, I think people, not that I, looking at comparing myself to others, but the fact that I had built in myself a habit of I'm getting better. I'm going to document how many minutes I'm in the gym. It became a habit over years and years and years, and I still do it today. I'm of course longer than 5 minutes, but that was a way that I started building in myself a self-improvement model, right? Another example, again, goofy one, but this is something that I've had to practice over the last year or so. And it probably even comes out on these podcasts sometimes. When I'm in a discussion or a meeting, I tend to have a very serious face, right? And I would get feedback actually from my boss. It's like, dude, it looks like you're scowling in these meetings. It looks like you're, just unhappy, whatever. And I'm like, no, dude, I'm thinking. This is my thinking face. But I recognize I actually recorded myself, and I'm like, oh yeah, this is bad. Um, you look like you just don't want to be here. So I started practicing, literally using this equipment that we're using here to give talks to myself, actually, I know, and force myself to smile. Not because I wasn't happy, it's just not my natural meeting thing, and basically to smile more and more. And then I got to a point where in meetings, I was doing a mental check every few minutes to make sure, because we're a lot of my times on Zoom sessions, is that, do I have that serious scowl look versus a nice Patrick smile look? And I'm actually, um, it's really helped from a meeting perspective. People see me as not, I don't know what the right term is, not angry or whatever, but more engaged in that type of thing. And I've noted that in my journals. So those are some examples, at least, from my perspective, about how I compare myself to others. Literally, I have in my journal, did I smile more today than I did yesterday? Right. So if anybody finds this journal at some point, they're going to find some weird stuff. But, so that's, kind of how this has really improved my lifestyle. And also what I found is that the more I focus on comparing myself to, am I better than I was yesterday? I find myself comparing myself to others less and less and less. It's almost a goal, a motivator for me. Like, yeah, if I can do this for myself, because this is the only person that I got, then that it's a motivation. It's almost a challenge to myself. All right, so that was kind of meandering, but I wanted to give some practical examples there. So Doug, talk to us, man.
Yeah, I'll jump in. Again, as I talked about having that competitive mindset and comparing myself to others, I really started to recognize I was doing that, and really had to force myself to think about, hey, I'm on my own journey. Going back to before I mentioned a bad time at work, where I kind of learned about what are the components of happiness at work. And really part of that was realizing, like, what does success mean to me? Like, so it's not like, what do I think everyone else thinks success is, but what does success mean to me? And success to me was just enjoying my day at work. So again, like, who I work for, who I work with, what I work on, and as long as I'm enjoying myself, I'm feeling successful. But also along this journey, learning about growth mindset and learning about incremental improvement, right? Like, one of the things, the phone is a distraction machine, right? And so, it's an evil entity. So again, you might be bored and you might look down and check your social media. And again, you get into that whole, oh crap, why didn't I have a great time at that bar last night, like that person posting on whatever. But, what I started to realize is like at times of distraction, when I was checking social media, I tried to convince myself, don't do that. How can I learn something in a few minutes? So how can you do, like you said, micro learning? And so, I started Medium, the Medium app. I started to kind of track certain topics on that. And instead of checking social media, I'll go in there and read a quick article or two. Or I have Feedly is another app that I have all these different blogs that, it aggregates those blogs, and I'll go in there and read a couple things. Or even on YouTube, uh, you know, certain topics. Like, so right now I'm doing a lot with Power BI, and I'll go look up a video on Power BI and learn to do something. And so again, like every day I try to, I guess one of the things I do ask myself is, did I learn something new today? And it's a great way to kind of get away from the distraction machine and get away from what are other people doing. But hey, I'm bettering myself. I'm growing. So that's my example.
That's good, Derrick.
Yeah, I think I'll say two shifts that's happened. I think for me in this topic. One key shift for me was going through a divorce and processing that moment of time in your life. I remember journaling. I think you mentioned it, Patrick, journaling. I think journaling is very key to get your thought out on a page and how you're feeling. We talked about that last time about, it's important that you write down how you're feeling, because in that writing that down, you might be comparing yourself to someone or feel like you're being judged or assessed by someone that drives that comparison or that competitiveness. Oh, I've got to be better today, or I've got to do this today because this person told me I need to, or this, that, and the other. But I remember writing a profound statement to myself in the journal that says, if it's not real, I no longer want it in my life. And I think that when you start analyzing that statement and you start applying that to your life, like if you go to the grocery store, you're not going to pick up a rotten fruit. You're not going to pick up a rotten veggie. You're going to go and you're going to look through what's available, and you're going to choose a shiny, vibrant, ripe fruit or vegetable that's going to serve its purpose. And I think that for me was a defining moment of getting rid of the rotten in my life, the things that were inauthentic, the things that were not real, the things that I were telling myself that were not true, that drove me to a mindset of comparison, and I've got to be somebody that I'm not. And I think that was a huge defining moment for me that I got through journaling. As you mentioned, I think that's a key for you as a human being, is to write down what it is that you're feeling or you're comparing yourself to or from, and ask yourself, is it healthy or not? Is it rotten, or is it something that's vibrant in your life? And that will help you in understanding that whole dimension of comparison in a healthy way or a non-healthy way. I think the second, I had a conversation with a young adult. I say it's my son last Sunday at brunch, and he's going through a situation in a relationship, and he's 20, and he is having some struggles. And so, anyways, he was saying to me that one of the things he's really struggling with is um, the other party comparing themselves always on social media, comparing themselves to things that aren't realistic or things that aren't real. And he says that's not lining up to my values, and so that's creating a conflict in our relationship, and it's driving me to not want to be in the relationship, because it's trying to, this other party is trying to make me into something that I'm not. And he says, I don't want that. And I don't have time for that in my life. And I was like, wow, what a profound thing to say at 20 years old, that I wish I could have said at 20, because at 40 some years old now, I would have saved myself a lot of pain and suffering. And so I was just, it goes back to that value system of like valuing knowing who you are, because you are not a checkbox on a website that's comparing a list of products. So you really have to not check that box anymore, to just stand in the space of owning who you are and letting that resonate for yourself, and letting that and walking forward in that light of knowing who it is that you are, what you're up to, what you value, what your internal guiding wisdom is saying, and let that lead you forward. So that's what I'll stop there. I don't want to get rambling too much, but I think that that was so valuable. Of, comparison, is connected to value, and that comes from an internal thing, that's something that's still small voice within, that's saying something.
Yeah, no, that's quite a story, Derrick. And knowing your sons, I can certainly see your son saying that. But that actually is really encouraging, because it goes back to what we talked about earlier, like the fact that somebody that young can see through that. We're watching highlight reels of other people's lives. It's not their life. It's a highlight reel, and it's great that he sees that. I have to say, it's unfortunate, a little bit sad that the partner is caught up in that loop of trying to get that social media type of thing, and all that kind of stuff. And I also like the fact that, and we've talked about authenticity and being genuine on this channel before, and I think that really ties into it, right? In the sense that I'm going to try to triangulate a couple of things that I've come across in the session here, right? We've talked about authenticity, right? Because if you're truly authentic, you want to improve yourself. You want to get that, compare yourself to who you were yesterday, not to others, and that type of thing. The fact that you can't control everything around you, you can't control outcomes, but you sure as hell can control if you're getting 1% better on a daily basis. That is something you can absolutely control. So, kind of bringing that, or I know we're getting close on time here. I think, the key points being that, yeah, comparing yourself to others in some cases can be foundationally good, such as role models and that type of stuff. But comparing yourself to your peers or others can also have a lot of pitfalls. Whereas the benefits of comparing yourself to who you were yesterday, and holding yourself and others accountable, are you getting 1% better, has a lot of benefits, and also ties into the general themes of what we're advocating for on this channel, is focusing on what you can control, being authentic to yourself, and in overall self-improvement. And I can tell you, out of all the things, at least that I do, that comparing yourself, am I better than what I was yesterday, is such a forcing function and a lever for self-improvement. Because I can tell you, when I have to write in my journal that I am not 1% better, it it gets me. It's a trigger for me, actually. And I never want to do that 2 days in a row. So anyway, I think we've covered some really, really good stuff here. Let's go around the horn to see if there's any closing thoughts or any words of wisdom.
Yeah,
Doug.
I'll throw one thing out there, is like, when you're actually spending your time looking at social media, or spending your time comparing yourself to others, and then because you're spending that time, you're having negative self-thought in terms of like, why aren't I doing that, or what's wrong with me, or whatever. Like, that time, you're actually wasting that time. And
Yeah.
that time you could be investing in yourself,
Yep.
to get better, right? So, and the more you're investing in yourself, the more positive outlook you're going to have for yourself. And again, there's all those benefits. So again, like, don't waste that time on that comparison.
Yeah.
And the last thing I'll quickly connect to is a theme that I think we've had through a lot of the episodes, is be kind to yourself,
Mm.
right? So
Yeah.
it's, again, don't get stuck in that loop, and spend more time. How can you be 1% better? What's something small you can do?
Yep. Well said, Derrick.
Yeah, uh, I mean, we are all in a competition, you know, with ourselves, and I think that, in that competition, it's so key to really know who you are, because you are special, you're one of a kind, you're unique. Talked about that earlier. And using your value system as the benchmark of comparing, am I better today or am I worse today than I was yesterday? I think that's very key. And if you're not, if you're saying that I'm not better today than I was yesterday, then use your value system and what is the disconnect within where that core values are to drive you forward to be better today. I think that's very key in this, to get out of that mode of the external comparison that we all are subjected to and subject ourselves to onto others in that way as well, through sometimes through judgment and assessment. So it all comes back to competing with yourself and comparing yourself to what it is that you value within yourself that drives you to be who you are.
Exactly. Accept what is, align with your goals, and take committed action based upon your goals.
Absolutely.
All right, folks. I think we're going to close this one out today. So I think we've covered some really good items. Just hope everybody has a great week. And remember, personal transformation and improvement is possible. Focus on what you can control, align with your goals, and move forward. Have a great week. Thank you.
Bye, everyone.